Rattvisa in the University of Agricultural Sciences, GAK, Bengaluru. So today I am very happy to be here, and I thank the organizing committee for giving me this great opportunity to stand before you all and present my paper. And the title of my paper is The Spur of Linguistic Patriarchy, a study of language, gender and society. So what exactly this linguistic patriarchy that I am talking about today? So linguistic patriarchy wherein the language, and in language also how we can see the gender domination in language. So I would like to start with this particular quote that but if thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought, that is from George Orwell. So in this abstract, I would like to say that language itself is very complex and dynamic in its nature. Especially when it is an acquired language, we should be focusing more and more on the style of language, the phrases, the connotational meaning, and also the delegational meaning. And as we can say that language is dependent on the thoughts what we think about. The same thing that we also try to talk in the same angle. So that is going to reflect on the behavior of the personality and how it is sometimes, most of the times, deeming one particular gender. So that exactly focuses on the culture as well, like culture through the linguistic approaches, like how we can see the gender and identity. So culture exhibits most of the culture, both in Western and in Indian culture, the male superiority and female suppression that can be even verbally also we can observe. And I come to that point when I start explaining in my argument. And the essence of culture enormously nourishes the gender stereotypes. That is which is very important to break this kind of an ideology and make gender neutralized words in the language. So language and patriarchy go hand in hand. So individual identity in the society, especially treating women, how we can make few gender neutralized terms so that that will be reflecting in our personality, which is very important. And as in generally that we can see the identity and the identity crisis that we, especially women, who is facing in the present society. So in introduction, I would like to talk about the history of civilization. So language, when we go to the roots of language, how it took its form. So we have to go to the civilization, like how men used to go out of the houses and then make their living. So they started taking the power positions, and women they were clinging on to into the houses and then kitchens or the storerooms. So this actually said that they got the power positions, and they become the authority to decide stuff. And this propagates the difference between the genders, and we can observe how the behavior that happened through language. And as we all know that society is a heterogeneous section, and we can get to see a lot of genders. It is not female or male. There is also the other gender, wherein we wrongly termed as third gender, and then they questioned it. They denied that the term third gender. Then the question was, who was the first gender and who was the second, right? So then that question, the female identity in the society. Now let me focus on the spur of linguistic patriarchy. As we all know, second says Simone de Beauvoir, shook the world with her ideologies. She says that one is not born but rather becomes woman. Right? So this is like when we take our birth, we are just babies. But later, the do's and don'ts that wraps the identity, the personality of a woman. So the norms of speech led to the phenomenon of gendered speech through performing acts where nouns, pronouns, adjectives, and even verbs are often marked with gender-specific marks. So Ray says that invisible women data bias in a world designed for men. She says that seeing men as the human default is fundamental to the structure of human society. For example, there are few terms where we always, the moment that we hear those kind of terms, we always think that it is men. For example, the boss, the president. Like the sudden image, the pictorial representation It is meant for one particular gender. And there are gender specific terms like a policeman, a fireman, right? So these are the gender specific terms that also that I have taken into my studies. So that portrays the institutional gender bias. And this is before going to the next slide. I have taken a pilot studies. For example, like it is not only 30 students that I took for my research. Since I am the course teacher in my university, I teach UG students, and I also teach grammar. When I was teaching subject of agreement, I posed a question. Usually I do it. That is, one should love dash country. So when I went for this diagnostic test, this is the result. And I know I would love to ask the question, but it is okay. So the answer is everybody, ma'am, almost, you can see the numbers here, his country. One should love dash country. People, I mean, my students said that, his country. And that belong like, even girls and boys. And a few said their country, that is 25%, and other country, girls said, and only 2% in the class, they said one's country. The subject should be agreeing with the predicate here. So this gave a very big question in my heart, like, what is the existence of the other gender in the society then? So the students in the university level, they are so much focused into the language, the patriarchal language. Then what is the identity of women? And now, when it comes to this gender bias, the statements, and also the norms, that is also reflected in the norms, right? So this is Geeta Harikaran, right? When it comes to the society and its gender-specific norms, I would like to quote this particular author. She's a contemporary author, Geeta Harikaran, and I have chosen her novels in my PhD. And she also, why I chose her in my PhD, because of her attitude probably, because she questioned Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, and she won the case against RBI, because what the exact this particular act says is women, I mean mother of children was not considered as the natural guardian. Only in the absence of father, women were considered as natural guardian, which she questioned in the court of law, and finally she won the case. So, only in the presence of men, these mothers were having, they were not having any rights at all on their children, minor children. And so this was the case against Section 6 versus Article 14 and 15. So she questioned that the equal, rights, right? And then, well, since it is a science congress, I just want to bring few of the women scientists into the forum. Since it is a patriarchal society, more privilege will be given to one particular gender. There are so many scientists, they were not, recognized thoroughly, and probably they could not get the amount of what recognition that they deserved. And in that sense, I would like to talk about Rachel Carson. So Rachel Carson is, we all celebrate Environmental 6 as, June 6th as Environmental Day. But when I asked my June 5th, right? When I asked my students, but what they say is, they have no idea who Rachel Carson is. Rachel Carson is the one who wrote Silent Spring in 1962, and she is considered as mother of modern environmental movement. But very few know about this particular scientist who spoke about the unscientific usage of the fertilizers. That is why DDT is banned, and because of her work, the entire world was shocked, and she was even invited back to the White House by back then Kennedy, and also US government action came up with the following acts like Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, creation of Environmental Protection Agency, Superfund of cleanup of highly polluted and toxic sites. And one more scientist which who is really invisible is Rosalind Franklin. I have to give an introduction about this great scientist? Because if we ask who is the father of DNA structures, it is only Crick and Watson. We always we make our students also to learn in the same order, but actually who is the one who who laid the foundation stone for that scientific research? She is the one, British chemist and X-ray crystallo. Sorry. X-ray crystallographer, and then she worked on molecular structures, DNA, RNA, and she came up with the structure of the molecular structures, and she was best at her work on X-ray diffraction images on DNA. And her student, that is Raymond Gosling, he came up with image 51, and then this laid a foundation stone for the future research in this particular field. But as ma'am was mentioning about in the first presentation, you were saying that since she is died, doesn't she get the image of the deserved recognition? If she is no more, we cannot forget about the contribution what Gauri Lankesh made in the field of media. The same argument even I would like to bring it onto the table here, that these people shared Nobel Peace Prize. Vincent Crick and Wilkin shared a Nobel Peace Prize in 1962. But nobody gave the recognition to this particular lady because she was already dead in 1958. Posthumously, they could have given her the recognition that she is the main person to for this particular scientific research and achievement. But yes, as one particular gender, since it is a patriarchal society, women are tend to face this kind of invisible, kind of an image. Though we are there, we are not there. Though we are working, that is not being appreciated much. Very much appreciated sometimes. And then findings, I would like to say that the data reveals that predominantly in the social order that male, that is men, are taking the center position. So whenever that we talk, there is some bias, gender bias in the statements. And for example, I would like to bring the words like Mr. and Miss, right? So Miss and then Mistress, wherein women has to give the marital status to the society. She has to show the marital status of a society. But wherein men, they need not to show their identity, the social identity or the personal identity for that matter. But how the gender specific term that it is there here. And also the one I would like to talk about is history. So when we say history, when you decode the word his story, so the history that what we see, it is always from men's perspective. That is why there is a new wave in English literature, that is revisionist writings, wherein we are re-looking at the history, reinterpretation, and then reanalysis that is happening in the recent times. And theory of identity, why I was talking. Okay, theory of identity, since I am talking about identity and identity crisis, so the entire study is based on the theory of identity, that is from Erik Erikson. So he talks about identity deficit and identity conflict, which is much related with language, and language and thoughts go hand in hand, and that will always influence social behavior, and these are interconnected. And Rachel Carson and Franklin had contributed immensely, but still they are not largely appreciated. And women representation should become more in each and every field, so that we can share the power position, and that gender neutral language can be encouraged. And conclusion, gender specific terms influence the thoughts of people in larger extent, as I mentioned. that is centralizing the male gender in the society. So semantics, look at the sentences here. Compared to boy strength in class, girl strength is decreasing. So it is a kind of, instead of saying compared to girl strength in the class, boy strength is surplus. So it is comparison with majority, with minority. So that is called as linguistic normativity effect. And gender bias and sexism in language, it says that linguistic choices made by the speaker affect the cognitive process of a listener, and it occurs automatically. So masculine generics is it leads to an automatic reaction in the mind of an individual. The individual begins with envision men in every category possible. So, for example, boxer and he and other term. So, patriarchal linguistic aspects centralizes men and considers women as other. That ignores women's every existence and does not recognize women's contribution to the society in every possible way, resulting in suppression of female gender. And these are all the few other gender-specific terms and gender-neutral terms I want to show. Then in conclusion, I could say that gender-fair language is very important in constructing an egalitarian society. Instead of using gender-specific term, neutral term will be more appropriate. One cannot change traditions and culture, but can change language in its evolution process, especially words denoting the linguistic